So hello once again. Today we have a Mentors Day on the responsive web design. So I conducted this lecture. So I will be more than happy to answer your questions if you have any. So basically we can go two paths. I can do some live coding. I will try to make the layout similar to the stuff that was made in your homework. That was assigned in the homework, or if you have any questions regarding the homework, we can start with this path. So does anybody has any questions? Probably not. Okay, so live coding is gonna happen. Or maybe you guys struggled with something during the homeworks. Okay, media queries. I see first comment. So what about media queries? What exactly? Should I go back to the media queries on responsive web design and talk about them once again? Any specific area of media queries? Okay, so from desktop to mobile. So let's see. I think that was covered somewhere on the slides. So basically, we have this approach called it's from desktop to mobile. Okay, so not the mobile first, the desktop first. So let me find this slide. Okay, maybe. Okay, maybe I won't just try to find the slides. It will take ages probably. So basically, when you are doing from desktop to mobile, probably it's gonna be a bit harder way in the end. So probably at the beginning, you will create your page very quickly on the large device, but once you will try to adapt to the smaller devices, you will have to reconsider what elements on the page are needed, which are not. So basically, at the beginning this is easier, but in the end you will be struggling with the mobile approach. So for instance, right now I'm working on a project at EPAM, and basically the designers are not fully following the mobile first approach, and after we do some initial desktop work, very often there are changes in requirements because some things that were working on the desktop were completely like unfeasible on the mobile. And the one thing you need to just know when doing media queries, when doing desktop to mobile, is the order of the media queries. So for instance here, this is the mobile first approach. So you are doing the media queries. Oh, guess what? So I think that's the slide that I was looking for. So if you are doing mobile first approach, you need to write your media queries in the ascending order so that the last one wins. But if you are and with min width. But if you are doing the desktop, this is what I'm going to do. Sorry. If we have time for live coding, I'm doing desktop first because that's pretty easy and really quick to achieve in the 1 hour that we have. So you have to reverse reverse the order. Yeah, so min width breakpoint rules should come one after another in ascending order, so the later wins. But if you are doing with max width, which is usually done with the desktop first approach, breakpoint rules should come one after another in descending order so that the later wins. Next question is about orientation of the screen. So what exactly, how can I help with that? So there is a media query. Media query orientation, right? So basically you can write your CSS selectors inside the media queries that are querying for the orientation. No big deal, I guess. Sometimes it gets useful, like when you are holding your device in a landscape mode, you can do, I don't know, some kind of full screen showing of the modal dialogues, or completely like here, change the rendering of the Flexbox container. Okay, so the question is, should the landscape orientation be threatened separately or simply as the width of the screen? Good question. So let me think about it. So from my experience, I use the orientation media query very rarely. So usually things are driven by the other media queries like width or height. But there are specific cases, like for instance, some particular features should maybe behave in a different way. Like I said, like recently we had a requirement that if you are holding a mobile device and you are showing a modal dialog, if the person is holding it in the landscape mode, then the modal is going like a full screen. It's just a nice, slightly better user experience. But on the other hand, when the user holds it in the portrait mode, then the modal dialog just doesn't go full screen because like the height would be too big. So just to summarize, probably I would suggest don't treat the landscape mode as a completely different, like a device. Rather use it for very specific cases. Okay, so the next question, the desktop view of the site was made in Photoshop and we only had to copy it, but mobile view was a different story. Could you take a look and tell me what you like and what I could do better? Okay, sure. Okay, cool stuff. Okay, so we have a desktop. Okay, so let's just have a look. I think I won't be delving into the pixel perfect details. I don't like doing that, so let's just maybe focus on the most important things. Okay, so desktop view looks pretty much. Oh, I think there's something wrong with this thing here, but anyway. Okay, so maybe let's zoom it out a bit. Yeah, okay, now it looks a bit better. Okay, so looks fine. Okay, so we are going down, we are going down. Okay, so probably, okay, maybe let's start from the top. Okay, so let's have a look at the header, how it behaves. Okay, so probably you have some kind of breakpoint. So there is this nice padding over here around the header, but when it goes below probably some bootstrap threshold, it disappears. So probably that thing could be done slightly better, but just a minor detail. Okay, so yeah, so that's yet another thing. So probably, I don't know, maybe there is some kind of interesting. In my live coding example, I have similar folders, HTML structure. Okay, so display flags. Probably those guys shouldn't be going into the separate line. Display flags. Yeah, so something here. Yeah, so basically there is still enough space, so it should be like still in the same place. Okay, so when we go into the real mobile device, then you have implemented the hamburger icon and the expandable menu, so perfectly fine. Okay, so that's about the header. Now let's focus on this part, which is usually called a hero or something like this. Okay, so we have, so here we should be probably looking at the sizes of the headers. So the font size is really big, so it should be getting smaller. So getting smaller. Yeah, so those icons are overlapping. So probably once the threshold, yeah, you should find this moment. So actually, like, yeah, if you would keep the previous behavior like those social media icons on the right, it would look still nice, but they are overlapping here. Oh yeah, and the sign up button breaks. Yeah, so definitely there is something wrong with this thing here. Okay, so yeah, so those icons, that's one thing. Probably you should be starting making the font size a bit smaller already. So media queries for font sizes here. Yeah, but in the end, once we hit the real mobile device, with you do it already, so that is perfectly fine. Probably, yeah. So as for accessibility, maybe those buttons doesn't look too well on the image, so you could consider moving them to another place, like keeping them here, or create some nice background with transparency so that they are more visible. But basically, they are they are behaving correctly. And perhaps maybe make them a bit smaller so that the user is able to tap them with the finger, and also make the padding a bit bigger. Yeah, like it would be hard to you know, to tap on the correct button. Those buttons are pretty big, so it shouldn't be an issue here. Okay, so once again, going back and focusing on this area. Let's call it services or something. Okay, so looks pretty well. Once we make it smaller, some things are starting to break. So basically, at some point, yeah, you see, like on the initial desktop view, things are nicely aligned, and so on. And when you start to make it smaller, like lines start to break, and like it doesn't look nice. So let's have a look. Oh, okay, so it's pretty complicated DOM layout. So because you have those in the separate containers, it would be really hard to align them. But let's have a look. Do you have any common? Oh, okay, probably it's not an easy thing to fix, because like the DOM structure is like really it contains like a different areas. Like I will show you my example later, so it's not going to be an easy fix. Probably if I was doing that, I would keep this thing as a one thing, maybe, and then I know though in the homework you had this thing that required you to draw lines, but probably I would be dealing with those things at the very end. Those are really minor things, and focus on this area and keep it as a one thing. And then you can easily play around with the flexbox and keep those things nicely aligned. Okay, and if we go smaller, yeah, so probably good choice. Maybe it doesn't look too fancy, but that's the idea. So you are starting to run out of place. So probably font is even getting slightly smaller, which is good. Or maybe just in, yeah, the font is getting smaller, so which is also nice. But remember, that font probably is too small. So yeah, so you have a calculation. So probably slightly bigger minimal font size should be used, like this thing. If we have a look at it, computed font size, like 12 pixels is really, really small. And it's gonna getting smaller and smaller. So remember about that. But in general, good choice. Like probably you are switching the Flexbox container to the direction column. Good choice. What is the smallest screen with portrait to consider? Probably, let's have a look. I don't have any particular yeah, so Galaxy S5, pretty old guy. I would say like 400 pixels should be something like this. But basically you can Google, or we can Google like smartphones. Yeah, so it still says like a 360, like a logical resolution. So probably this guy. Yeah, but probably, yeah, just Google around. Okay, so where did we stop? Okay, this area covered, this one, physical security. Okay, so you change slightly the layout. It looks pretty good. Just remember that on the devices that don't use mouse, you won't have the hover effect. So that's something to remember. It looks pretty nice. So the company names are wrapping, which is good. Yeah, this thing looks really good. Okay, let's go down. Okay, so this thing I guess we have covered. Okay, so let's have a look at this guy. Yeah. So I don't know how this thing is used, but yeah, so basically this image gets lost, right? So maybe we will try to find it. I will try to find it where it could be. Oh, this is background, so I won't find it in the source code. Okay, so probably, yeah, so do something with this image, right? So it like moves into this direction. There are CSS background properties that can be used, like background position. So those can be used to dynamically change the position of the background, for instance. Okay, but once we get to this threshold, it looks well. So organized really nicely. Buttons in the correct order. Yeah, of course you can also play around with the images. So I don't know if you used it. Oh, okay. So this guy has it. Okay, so what will happen if we go there here? Okay, so you probably have background images on the different elements depending on the device width. Okay. Yeah, so of course you can use responsive images. This section looks nice as well. So, and the footer. So yeah, there was this weird requirement of aligning the footer with something here. So looks okay. Let's shrink it. Yes, still enough place. Yeah, so you also used some kind of breakpoint when the things start to get nasty. So for instance, the logos are collapsing into the second line. So probably this breakpoint maybe could be done a bit earlier. So you change the layout so it still looks nice. Yeah, I think it's works really well. So probably Flexbox container with wrapping. Looks good. So good job. Apart from the header. Okay. Any more questions? Anybody wants to share a homework? Yeah, and also remember about those font sizes. Don't make them too small. Okay, let's wait 1 minute, and unless we have more questions or more homeworks to have a look, I will just show the thing that I crafted, and we will have a look at the CSS HTML structure. Okay, maybe in the meantime, let's have a look at the source code. Unless it's minified, we will see something. Okay. Yeah, you mean this one? Yeah, I could imagine. Oh, gradients, gradients, gradients. Mm-hmm. Okay, no display grid, but Flexbox was used all over the place. So I guess this is nice. Okay, so if there are no more questions. If somebody has any questions or any topic to discuss, just chat on the channel. In the meantime, I will show like the really raw version of the homework that I created. Okay, unfortunately, I didn't focus on the nitty-gritty details like gradients, more on the responsiveness of the page and general CSS and HTML structure. So no gradients, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so basically, okay, we can go the, let me think, hard path, because probably we won't have enough time. It's already 30 minutes. So let me just present like the ready version and we will just go step by step. So it doesn't look like the homework, but the things that I was trying to focus on. Like I said, my goal was to do it with live coding if we didn't have any questions. So the point was to make a really nice responsive design. So like things are colored just to show like the borders of the elements that I have on my page. So the thing was just to create a nice layout, which is responsive. And to see how it can be done. So like our colleague, I didn't focus on creating the, for instance, hamburger icon. So you can find plenty of code snippets how to do it. So let's have a look at the source code. So basically, when I started, I like downloaded some scripts. Sorry, there is a question. Okay. Some Bootstrap to reset the styles, Google font, I'm using it in one place, and basically body background color to see, to distinguish the whole page from the elements, and basically that's it. And so this is the Angular project. I know, guys, you are working with the React recently, but like most of my time recently is based on Angular, so I decided to use it to show it on Angular. But basically, it's not so much difference. I just have a components that render the slices of the homework. So how I approached this homework. So basically, I just tried to figure out what are the main elements on the page. So there is a header. Oh, yeah. So there is a header here. It looks like the designer wanted us to divide it into 3 or even 4 areas. So there is a logo here. Probably this could be an SVG image. We have a main navigation bar. We have, I called it authentication navigation or something like this. And we also have options to select languages. So those things went into the header component of my code. Then this slice looks pretty easy. So a typical hero component, so main content like a big title, buttons, background image, and those social icons. So pretty easy thing. So that's like a second slice. The only tricky thing is that if we have a look at the layout, so like most of the things have those borders. So it seems like I didn't measure it exactly, but between here and there, probably there should be 1400 pixels. And this thing just goes, spreads to the full screen. That was at least my impression. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is how I did it. So like in the layout, we have those areas here that are mostly not covered, with two exceptions. So we have those social icons and we have this company list, which is also going outside. Okay, but first thing first. So then we have this really complicated thing in terms of those borders. So in my solution, I didn't bother with those borders. Probably they could be done pretty easily with some content after. That's my impression. So basically, I just focus on this area. So it looks pretty easy. So we have like a free services that the company offers or whatever. And the only thing that probably I should keep in mind that if we will just decrease the device width, then it should be wrapping. We don't have this kind of issue here. With header, we of course need to make it look nice on the device, on the small device. Then this area, like showing the list of companies that are using our product or something. Yeah, so this thing with this background image. Once again, some kind of list of the companies that are working with us or whatever, and of course the footer. So those two things, fortunately, align nicely with the main area that we have. And of course, we need to remember that if we will make it smaller, then we need to wrap it up somehow. So after this initial breakdown, I created like a main layout container with just the slices that I described. So I have app header, app hero, social icons, services, a list of clients, a list of companies, and the application footer. And let's have a look at the layout. So basically, this is the component which is responsible for drawing a layout. So as I was reading through the homework assignment, so the goal was that page shouldn't be bigger than, like the content shouldn't be bigger than 1400 pixels. So like, at least that was my understanding, right? From here to here, 1400 pixels, this thing is like out of the scope. So I used the CSS Grid to accomplish that. So the layout container is a grid container. I have some columns. So at the edges, I have one FR. If you remember from the lecture, this is responsible for distributing the space which is left. So if we have a look at the layout, so this is exactly this space here. So from here to here, we have like 400 pixels, and those are the fractional spaces that are distributed. Then initially, I did just the main content, min, max, 0 pixels. Probably it should be like auto, but I just put a 0 here because I just wrap the content anyway. using Flexbox usually, but I just split it into the two columns, 1200 pixels and 200 pixels, because on the Photoshop file there is this requirement that it seems like this thing here is like a separate column. So I gave it 200 pixels and I just I just have it as a separate column, because some things apparently need to be aligned to this thing. So this is why I have additional column, so that my grid container is responsible for laying, for instance, the footer in the correct areas. So I don't need to put a padding or margin here. I just put the footer in the correct areas, and it just renders here without this column. But other things like the services or the hero, they should take the whole space. So 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and then we have the grid template areas. So the dot symbol means that I don't want to put anything in this slot. So the header spreads. So we have 4 columns. So the header spreads covers 2 middle columns. The hero takes everything. Yeah. So dot is very useful thing if you just don't want to put things inside the columns. So header covers the middle 2. Hero goes full screen. Probably now I'm looking at this. Maybe it's not a good solution because the company list goes really wide. So probably I should make this container also with some maxed width. Yeah, it doesn't look. Basically, I didn't test it on the really wide screens, just on my bigger screen. So I didn't issue before. At least it is an issue. So the hero spreads the whole width. Then the services, just like header, takes 2 middle columns. Then the clients list takes 1, 2, 3. So client list, this is something that I have here. So as you see, like it jumps out of the regular layout, takes 1, 2, 3, and doesn't take this slot. The company list, yeah, so the company list and the footer, so the things that are aligned in a weird way on the PSD file, so they don't cover the left free space and they don't cover the 2 last columns. So this is why I have this effect of aligning the footer and the company list with my menu. So this is how I achieve this effect. And also, of course, I need to tell which components, those are just a custom tags, go into which areas. So up header, of course, go into the header, hero goes to hero, and so on and so on. And here the first media query that I used. So basically, I just discovered that the page looks pretty decent until I hit the breakpoint of 800 pixels. Yep, so when I hit the 800, was it 800? Yeah, so template areas, header footer. Okay. Yeah. So pam. Let me just have a look. I think I have a mistake. Media screen maxed with 800 pixels. Let's recompile it. Or not, no, sorry. I was changing something at the last minute. It's the media query, which is not working. Yeah. Okay, just thinking, media screen and maxed with 800 pixels. Port is fine. I'm looking at the correct version. I have zoomed out. Yeah. So the pixels were the pixel value was still greater. So when I hit the breakpoint of 800 pixels, I start to see that I don't like this layout anymore. So I switched to just a simple one column layout. So now everything is one column. So the header, hero, this services area, those lists, and the footer. So basically it starts to look like really simple one column layout, which is easily achieved with the CSS Grid. And yeah, so as you see, I just only change the grid template areas, and that's it. Also, I add some padding to my elements, so basically they have this space here around, because on the big screen, like if I have more space, then basically this space is responsible for giving the some breathing space, but when I go to mobile, I need to add it like manually. Okay, so let's have a look at the header component. So this guy here, so how it looks. So basically I have a Flexbox container, basically a few of them. So that's the one element, which is a logo. This is the second Flexbox container, and this one is the third one. So basically I need to split those so that it aligns with the things in the footer. So let's have a look at the source code. So HTML header element, then I have the logo. And then I have a logo, I have a navigation. So the first slice of the navigation, those are like regular links to the page. And then I have the login and out buttons. And then I have a second navigation called languages. So how it looks, so like I said, it's like a typical Flexbox container. So the whole header element. So I give it some padding, a space to breathe. It's Flexbox container. I tell it to wrap, so that maybe let me just take it here. Yep, it's gonna be easier. Yeah, so I say to this Flexbox container to wrap, so that when it doesn't have enough space, it will just wrap. So the menu goes one line below, and then it just nicely aligns. So this is achieved with the flex wrap. Justified content space between, so that we have space between the elements. And what's next? So the logo, really simple Flexbox container. I only used it to center it vertically. Just that's the only reason. And then I say that my navigation should also be a Flexbox container, like a nested one. So because the navigation is Flexbox container, those guys are Flexbox items automatically. So I can tell them to, I can, for instance, set the gap. And yeah, so basically, this is the Flexbox container. So for instance, I tell those Flexbox container to justified content to flex end. So by doing that, I'm able to push those navigations to the right. So this thing without the CSS style would be like a centered probably, or something like this. And the same goes with the authentication navigation menu. So it's pushed to the right. So align center I use of all of them, so that they are aligned vertically. And also I use the flex wrap. So without this flex wrap, we wouldn't be able to achieve this effect of moving like those flex items into the next row. So the same happens. Yeah. Okay, and I also say that my authentication navigation menu should have at least 200 pixels. So this is how I did it to have this spacing here. I did min width because in case, I don't know, maybe we have a multi-language support or something and the text is bigger, then it will grow. So it's not such a big deal if some things are slightly not aligned, but I'm safe. So basically my content of this authentication menu won't just overlap or overflow. And languages navigation, it's yet another Flexbox container. So maybe one interesting thing is that I used flex basis 100%. So basically it just tells that I would like the ideal width of this element is 100 width of the container. So this is why this navigation is always on the next line. So without this, it would like go to the right side. But I just, to keep the DOM structure simple, I just told it, hey, take the whole place and because Flexbox is like smart. It uses the 100%. It cannot fit here, so it moves to the next line. And because those elements are on the same container, I see this effect that this right side of the navigation is going down, and this one is going down as well. So with the good DOM structure, it was pretty easy to achieve. Okay. And just one small media query. So when I hit this breakpoint, like 1440 pixels, I want to give the header component a bit of padding. So what it means, like, let me zoom out. Yeah, so basically I always want to have a slight space on the edges. Okay, so next component, it's app hero. So let's go to hero component. Okay, so this one is pretty easy. So H1 with the main title of the page, H2, and the section for the buttons. So this host selector, basically, it's Angular thing, but it's not so hard to understand. Basically, it tells to just style this element on the page. So it's like styling the container of this thing. So here, initially, there was no need to any to do any CSS Grid nor Flexbox. So I just simply want to center the whole content, add it top and bottom padding. And I also say that no matter what is the content inside it, I don't want it to be smaller in height than 400 pixels. And I also give it some kind of image and using a background size cover so that the image now doesn't have to have the exact dimensions of the container, but it will cover it nicely. So this is how it looks. So this is the hero component. So as you can see, if I disable background size covers, basically it doesn't look nice, but with background size cover, the browser tries to put the image to fill the container with the image as best as it's possible. And the same with min height. So I just basically wanted to have the min height. What else? Yeah, so basic styling of the headers, some accent on the last word of the header, nothing fancy, and also small example of media query. So basically, so as you can see, this is like a desktop first approach. So I was specifying the base styles that are for desktop, and then once I shrink, the max width rules kick in, and I'm doing the mobile version. So that was faster to achieve. So I just pretty much do the same thing that one of your colleagues did, just making the font size smaller. I didn't use those formulas, but of course that is a good practice. So basically, when I go down below 800 pixels, I start to see that things get nasty, and I change the font. And what I also do, I think it's also in this component, it has to be, I change the background size, the background color, so that it gives like a better contrast ratio. Because on the big picture, like the background of the image, the clouds make the headers visible, but when I shrink it down, yeah, so without this background, color, it would be a bit harder to read. So some accessibility issues, and on smaller size, it would be even worse, right? So always like also remember about accessibility issues. Yeah, but like you would have spotted it anyway. So that's one thing. So buttons, there was nothing done in this area, nothing significant. So this component was pretty easy. Yeah, so just one thing here is a bit more complicated. So like the actions container is a flexbox container, and I just justified content in the center, and I used the gap property, but I just used it because I didn't need to support any other browsers than Google Chrome, but the gap has a really poor browser support. So if you want to have a better browser support, you need to write more queries that address the child elements. So the gap is pretty smart, and it applies the gaps only between the elements. So it doesn't do it before the first and after the last one. So if you change it to padding or margin, you will need to style it appropriately so that first child and last child don't have the left margin and right margin. So it's more writing, but because I could, I just used the gap, which is very new to the CSS specification. There is a question. It could be interesting to see how to make those gray lines so they move or don't. So do you mean like those lines? Yep. So, So my first initial idea was to use just something which is called like I won't be able definitely to live code it right now, but usually these kind of things are done with something like after and before. So you just need to play around with those and specify, yeah, just like in the Stack Overflow question. So I don't know if that's gonna work in this particular case. I didn't do it on my own, but probably it could be achieved with this approach. Yeah, as you can see, you can do plenty of things like position relative. So position absolute probably yes as well. So it should be possible to achieve this effect. So, or maybe let's give it a short try. So Where did we have it? Okay, on this guy. So, okay, so hero component covered. Let's try to make those lines. So I think the services component is what I need to do. So I have this guy. So first list item. Okay. So we can see something. Okay. So position absolute with so right 0. So where did it go? So height. Okay, border right. So like top. Okay. So basically we need this guy to be position relative. Yeah, top right. Pixels. Yeah, so the tricky thing would be to know how big it should be, right? So yes. Okay. Okay, let me think. So we know the width of this guy. So how does it look? Pam, pam. Do I have somewhere the original? Not here, not here. Could somebody drop me a link to the PSD file on the chat? Because I don't have it. Oh, okay, I have it. Download. Okay, how does it look here? Okay, so let's assume that the hero component ends somewhere here. So we would need to have this content after on the element which is directly a neighbor with this guy. So when I say like position top 0, it will just go there. Okay, I think I refreshed the page, so. Okay, so on app services, we would need to do it on app services. So on the host element. Not host, UL. UL, and the host is gonna be position relative, and this guy is gonna be position absolute. So width it's gonna be 1 pixel, height it's gonna be 100%, content right 0. Let's see. Yeah. So this guy has, okay, let's maybe roll back. UL after. Okay, so UL first of type, because we have like, oh no, we have only one. So we don't need this guy. Okay, so let's give it a try. Okay, so it's here. Okay, but it needs to start on this guy. Okay, but we know what is the padding of this guy, so we can roll it back to the even previous version. So UL first of type, okay. So once again, we will be making this guy like position relative, so it's container. Then we make this guy position absolute. We make height send. Okay, I can see it. Then let's make it right 0. border right, position absolute. Ah, I did. This guy should be position relative, not this guy. Oof, yes, okay. So, but yeah, and the goal is to draw it here to this place. So the padding is 2 rems. So okay, and we need it to be top minus 2 rem. Yeah, if we make the width like 1 pixel, yeah. So yeah, looks ugly, but at least proves the point. So by using the calc function, positioning the after element absolutely, you can just infer where to put it. Like it's in the middle, right? Because we have like 50% to plus 2 rems, and we are moving it top minus 2 rems to cover for the padding that the component has. So something similar like here. And yeah, if we zoom out, yeah, so this thing will look similar, but you would need to account for the padding, which is somewhere here, and like this component would also need, or not. So basically, yeah, so it's not so hard. So basically you draw the after element once again, but this one in the reverse order. So it will go to this point, and you do the same with this component. So this guy will have content after, and it will draw. This one should be pretty easy because it seems like this line is being drawn like on the full height of the element. Probably there could be some alternative approaches because those things are really really easy to break, because you are right now you are just assuming that this component, this guy here, is gonna be always in line no matter what the viewport size. So, but on top of my head, I cannot think of any other solution. So probably maybe even like this slice of the layout should be like included in this bigger component. So it probably it would make sense because it seems like those guys are aligned. Or you could do additional grid cells, like a nested grid. Yeah, but content after position absolute, and it seems like something similar can be achieved. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, there is another question from Andrzej. Okay, I posted my version of the project on GitHub pages. Yeah, we can have a look. Oh, looks pretty good. Okay, so maybe the other way around. Responsive, 75%. See this line. Yep. Oh, really cool. Okay. Yeah. Or like Andrzej did. So he just assumed that it works fine on the desktop, but once you go below some threshold, they just disappear, and it's also like at least nice for me. So looks awesome. Oh, CSS Grid. So Andrzej, how did you do those lines? Oh, with after. Okay. Position absolute, right. Even though those stars are. Yeah, so something similar. Yeah, so awesome job. So you didn't have the padding probably, right? So position absolute, right, 0. Oh, so you have, yeah, topped because there was no padding. Yeah, cool. Should we take a look on the whole page on different layouts, or you wanted only to share? Yep. Yeah, really awesome job. So something mentioned on one of the lectures. So basically, yeah, you could create a hamburger icon and make the menu expandable, but here the menu is pretty short. So Andrzej created many big buttons that will be easy to click. So that's pretty nice. So looking at the header, yeah, so it moves really awesome. So yeah, you can see. Yeah, also yeah, the same small glitch here with overlapping icons, but looks awesome. Okay, going down. Yeah, looks good. One thing about, yeah, so you didn't, yeah, so also nice approach, like you completely disable the image. Could be a good solution as well. Things are going down. Yeah, this thing looks like a pixel perfect solution. So it's possible. So maybe, okay. Yeah, it looks awesome. Yeah, so you have the same thing, the same idea like I did. So at some breakpoint, you just ignore this weird alignment and you just go with the full width. pretty good. Yep. Anything else about this site? Really good job. Okay, thanks. Okay, so basically I feel ashamed with what I just show. Yeah. So we still have some time. So if there are no questions, let's proceed with the next slices. So social icons. So that was a bit interesting. So how social icons were done. So the markup is pretty easy. So just a list with the free icons. Once again, I make it a flex container. I just align items in the center and move it to the right. But the interesting thing is that on my layout, component CSS, on my layout, I place the social icons component in the same area as hero. So this is perfectly valid in CSS Grid. And because in my HTML, the social icons element is after the hero, so I don't need a Z index, and basically social icons will be rendered later, so they will be visible. So where is it? Where is it? So the social icons are here, and they reside in the same grid area as the hero component. So that's one maybe more advanced thing. So I center it vertically. I say justify content flex end so that the where is the social icons component? Yep. I say flex end so that it goes to the right side. So align items is instead of stretching, I want to have it centered in the middle. What else was done? Yeah, so the icons. So this list is also a flexbox container with the column flow. I give it a padding, just a background color to give it a more contrast ratio, a grid gap. And basically that's it. And one media query for the smaller screen sizes because I didn't swap the image. So when things got to start, when I just changed the layout, I just moved those icons to the bottom because if they were here on this image, there is black on black, I couldn't see nothing. So I just do this one media query. Still not perfect design. Probably maybe the font colors could be, font of some color could be changed to white instead. But yeah, that's just one of the ideas. Just move it to a different place so it fits nicely with the image. Yeah, so social icons. What else do we have? After social icons, we have services. This is how I called it. Yeah, so services is like this thing here. So just like on the layout, on the big screen, I have this breathing space on both sizes. And then when I try to shrink, I just collapse it that's it. So also not a complicated thing if we have a look. Services component and CSS. Yeah, so a lot of markup, but nothing fancy going on here. So a font, awesome icons, just one container, a div element for description. Yeah, and just basically playing around with Flexbox. So maybe one interesting thing here. So I'm using the Flex basis, 300 pixels. So on the large screen, it just tells it to like it shouldn't grow above 300 pixels. I mean, like this is the perfect size. Sorry. So if this is less than 300 pixels per each, then it will start wrapping. So if this guy doesn't have 300 pixels, like you can see, like I'm 700, there is some paddings, so it starts to collapse. So this is done with a flex wrap. And also I allow the item to grow. So without this grow thing, the items like wouldn't be growing. So I say like 300 pixels, that's my perfect width, but otherwise allow the item to grow if there is enough space. But if there is less space than 300 pixels, try to wrap. Pam param, okay, and this is our fancy border. Okay, what do we have after services? We have app clients. So app clients. So yeah, so this is this area. Oh, I wonder how did you do it? So you have it here. Just out of curiosity. Yeah, so similar impression as I had. So yeah, so if the screen gets really, really big, space evenly, so it will like be almost stuck at the edge. So perhaps this is something that should be reconsidered. Also, I have the impression like that the space on the left side and right side is not equal, but it's a minor thing. Okay, so going back, yeah, so services, what was the name of it? Clients, so like Wall Street Journal, blah, blah, blah. So here we have fancy icons. On my version, we have yeah, just a text, but still. Yeah, so as you remember on the grid layout, so I told it to go outside of those two middle columns and stick to the left. So this is why you can see it like goes to the edge. But this is like a regular Flexbox container. So at the 800 pixels threshold, if we move to 100, right? Yeah, I just changed slightly with the media query how it behaves. So I make it like centered and just simply wrap it. Nothing fancy. If we have a look at clients, oh, it's even simpler. So I didn't use even a Flexbox container here. I didn't need to do it. So by default, it The text align by default is left. So, and I said that those are just links, regular links, and I say make them display an inline block and add a padding to each of them, 0 rems. Yeah, so there is no flexbox container here. So when I hit the threshold, I just do text align center, and because those are inline block elements, they just wrap automatically. That could be done with flexbox as well, but there was no need to use flexbox here. No need to do alignments, justifying and content and features that flexbox offer. Okay, no questions in background, so let's proceed. So then we have a company list. Yeah, so that's the thing here. Yeah, so here I guess there is a flexbox container. So basically it displays the items, and probably there is a flex end used here to just push the items to the right. And the only interesting thing probably is that once I move to the 800 pixels threshold, once again, I just change the behavior of the flexbox container. So it's centered and things just wrap nicely. So the list CSS and HTML. Yeah, so pretty easy component, just a header and a list. Yeah, so like I said, the whole list is using flex end, so we go to the very right of the container. And when we hit the threshold, I just use text align center so that the header is centered, and I specify justify content space around instead of flex end, and as a result, the content in the flexbox container has justified around strategy, and it's no longer pushed to the end of the container. Component and the footer. So let's see how the footer behaves. So as the previous section, it's aligned here. So it doesn't take this grid layout column. So as on the layout, those links are on the left. Then I have like a 3 subsections here. And basically when once again, when I hit this 800 pixels threshold, so even before that, if I don't have enough space, yeah, so this is like a DOM element which doesn't have enough space for all the navigation items, so they go to the right. And if I go to the 800 pixels, I change slightly the behavior, and everything like is centered. So yeah, so plenty of things once again with Flexbox. So as you can see, like it's almost a silver bullet for everything. Let's have a look maybe at the media query. Yeah, so once I hit the 800 pixels, yeah, so I just tend to use this flex basis 100. So I say that, so we have those emails and secondary navs. This is how I call them. So this is emails, this is secondary navs. And when I hit the 800 pixels threshold, I say secondary navs, use the flex basis 100%. And because I use it, it just tries to take the whole space. It doesn't have enough space in the current row, so it wraps And this is how I achieve this effect of going down. And justify content space around to make it center. Anything else interesting here? Probably not, so I guess we can have a look. Yeah, so once again, now the DOM structure. So also one of the techniques that I often use. So if I have like a Flexbox container, then everything inside is becoming Flex items. And if I want to grow one of the elements, like in this case, I wanted these sections to take whole place possible, then I'm using the flex grow one. So without it, the space would be equally divided and we wouldn't have this effect. So I can do it this way. Or probably margin left auto. Oh, it didn't work. I don't know why. It took some margin, but probably on this guy I would need to do. Because this guy has a margin auto as well, so they divide it. Yeah. There's always an answer. Yeah, so FlexGrow, pretty awesome tool in your toolkit that you can use with Flexbox to achieve like some different behaviors. Anything else? Probably not. So yeah, so that was my approach to like tackling the responsiveness and layout. Question, do you know something about our exit interview? No, unfortunately, not yet. So I guess my time is up. So I don't have anything else to show. So unless you have some questions anybody wants to share. Thank you guys for sharing your solutions. Then we can like close it. So let's wait 1 minute. And unless we have questions, let's call it a day. Yeah, Jacek. So I guess as you can see, like Flexbox is used more often, definitely more often. So like probably I could use the grid layout in maybe 1 or 2 more places, but definitely Flexbox is something that when you start display flex, it's really awesome. Yeah, but as you could see, like for the layout, grid is really cool because you can define those grid areas, you can move stuff around with media queries. So it also has its place. Okay, guys, so I guess that's it. So thank you for your attention and good luck with your. Oh, one more question. How long would it take to a professional? That's a good question. Well, okay, I will answer it this way. So to make it pixel perfect, so my area of expertise is not particularly being pixel perfect. I usually get the designs and some kind of like a basic layout. But yeah, so devil lies in details. I would say maybe like 1 day should be enough for a professional to make it like a really pixel perfect. Of course, it depends how complex it is and how it behaves on the different devices. So just remember, you need to test it on the device. So you cannot just make it in the browser. You need to take your phone into the hand and just try it there, whether everything's work completely. So considering all the efforts, testing and so on, maybe it could take more time. But like this thing took me 2 or 3 hours. Of course, I didn't have time to extract all the assets from the PSD file like the other guys did. But like a general structure, I think like this is pretty useful, right? So I just need to style it properly to look nice. So try to start with a plan. So maybe, I don't know, print this PSD or JPEG, take a pencil, try to slice the elements on the PSD into like the CSS grid columns and rows. Because if you make a bad decision and you start just writing without any planning, then probably you will make some bad decisions. Like here, there was this weird alignment. So spend some time on planning. Okay, cool. So thanks a lot, guys. It was a pleasure to meet with you guys once again, and good luck with the rest of the RS school and the exit interviews. Have a nice evening. Bye.